Okay, let's get started with pull requests. We're going to GitHub. I'm going to the base of my GitHub account, and I am going to create a new repository called pull requests, pull-requests. This is a public one, and we're going to initialize it with a README. Everybody sees this here? Let's go to this URL, github.com/peterbsmith2/pull-requests. All right. Who's following along on pull requests now? We got Tom, Reason, Jen, Ben, Ed back there is doing. Doug, you're doing pull requests too?
Yes. Well, I'm about to catch up.
All right. Yep. Yeah, let's see here. Zoom. Got part 2. Do a new one. Do a little of this with the screen and record it again.
Forget the beat.
Yeah.
Peter, you're a blockchain guy now.
Yeah, the B's for blockchain. github.com/peterbsmith2/pull requests. All right, if you're not there, just put your hand up so I know. All right. What do repository owners have the option to do that no one else does? They have the option to edit their code directly and push to the master. I have this little edit button here as a repository owner. So I can click on that edit and I can change this file from pull request with a hyphen to pull capital requests, and I can put in the contributors section and I can add my name, and I can at the bottom commit these changes. I'll say docs and I'll say add contributors. And look at the two options that I've got. Commit directly to the master branch, create a new branch for this commit, and start a pull request. I'll do the second option, and I'll say docs, and contributors is the name of it. I'll propose the file change. So now it says open on pull request. I will be the I can't review it myself. I can assign it to myself. And if I wanted to add a label to organize it, I'll say it's documentation. I can make a comment about it, which is to say format README to recognize contributions and create the pull request. Looking at this repository, if everybody refreshes now, you can all see very publicly there is one pull request on this repo. So we get to the first point of the pull request, peer review. If you want to change code on any open source project, you're likely to have another person review it to make sure that what you're doing is a benefit to the people that use the project. If your idea to work on an open source project is to delete a whole bunch of code, you're unlikely to be benefiting the project. If you had the option to do that without anybody reviewing it, open source would be at your mercy. You could, at any point, break anything. So how do you make sure that something doesn't break? You propose changes. In this very simple case, this pull request is a proposal to add contributors. when I click on it, I can then see there is one commit associated with it. That commit has a title of docs add contributors. It is done by myself. It was done 2 minutes ago. It is verified. It has a hash. It has an expansion to browse the repository at this point in history. And if we look at the next tab here, we can look at the files that are changed. Here's another part of pull requests. It extends the capability of Git. What we're seeing here is what's known as a diff, D-I-F-F. That is the difference between what was and what is. What was is in red. It was a pull request with lowercase p, lowercase r, hyphen in the middle, and what is now is in green. That's a pull request with capital P, capital R, as well as the addition of a section for contributors and the name Peter B. Smith. So that looks like a benefit to the project. Now we've got some contributors. I have the option to merge the pull request. I can do that in 3 ways. I can create a merge commit, I can squash and merge, and I can rebase and merge. I prefer rebase and merge, and we won't talk too much about the details on it. But what has happened after that merge is that those proposed changes and the differences that were expressed between what was and what is are now a part of the core of the code base. So when I go back to the code, that file now reflects those changes. The whole point of the pull request has been expressed in this short example. As a contributor, decide I can benefit a project. Instead of talking about it, write whatever the benefit is in code, and then propose it and ask somebody to see it. Somebody can then review those changes and choose to accept them. All right, let's everybody contribute to this and add our names as contributors. So, if you are on github.com, Peter B. Smith 2 pull requests, you'll see a little edit button. Does everybody see that? You can click on it. Your option will be a bit different than mine. I can create a new branch, but I'll make anybody a contributor. I think that should work too. Has everybody here got a GitHub account? Let's use that as a prerequisite for being able to go through this exercise. Raise your hand if you do not have a GitHub account. Okay, Ed, you are unable to do this exercise until you get one. You are unable to do anything on GitHub until you get an account. So your next step is to get a GitHub account.
Sign up.
Yep. Sign up, put your helmet on, get in the game. Who here has been able to open up a view to edit this document? We got a bunch of people that are on it. All right. So at that next point, type your name underneath mine. Scroll down to the bottom when you're there, and it's going to have some options for you. And without knowing off the top of my head what your options are, it's going to look something like create a fork of this repository and propose changes, et cetera, et cetera. Is that similar to what you're seeing there? Everybody's sort of seeing that? Go on forward, follow the prompts, and then ultimately you're going to open up a pull request. While you're going through that process, ask any questions if you got them. Ben.
So Peter, if I find some like open source library, for instance RxJS, and I want to contribute to it, should I just go straight ahead, spend hours upon hours, days upon days, and submit the error report?
All right.
On just like something that I feel.
Yep. The question is, when you're dealing with real open source projects, how do you get started with making a contribution? And the way to get started with making contribution on a big project is to check out the industry standard contributing.md document. Let's have a look at a big project like RxJS. RxJS is on GitHub. We go to GitHub for RxJS. We click on it, we see the repository, and holy cow, there it is contributing. I've never looked at this repository before, but I knew there would be contributing because every big project has one. And this contributing guidelines changes based on what the project is, but they all have the same function, which is to share with you what are the standards for this repository. Submitting a pull request is in the table of contents here. After your pull request is merged, code style guidelines, documentation, unit test, performance test, commit message guidelines. These are all standards to uphold in order to make one of your commits a part of the 3,809 commits for RxJS. Let's have a look at another one. We'll go to React on GitHub. Facebook, React. There are 1,341 contributors to this project. Open source is the epitome of the mob or wisdom of crowds. It is intelligent folks who are trying to achieve a single goal using their own resources and intelligence to make a product that is given away for free to the world, only so that everybody else can share in that knowledge. 1,341 people have contributed to React, and in order to know how, they go to contributing.md, and then they look at what the React contribution guides say. This one is not here in the contributing MD. You go to another link on how to contribute. You follow their code of conduct. You understand what open development is. You understand semantic versioning and branch organization and feature flags and bugs and how to get in touch and proposing a change in your first pull request and sending a pull request and contributor license agreement and contributor prerequisites and development workflow. And when you start to get into the depths of how to maintain standards, you really go deep and know that the bigger the project, the more depth there is to how to contribute, and the bigger the hurdle it is to get a commit into one of these projects. You don't want to use React as a first project, but you do want to know that it is possible and open to you to make a contribution at any time. Going back to here, I'm going to check on open pull requests, and it looks like we've got 2 in now from that example. Fun with testing PRs and update README MD by Sam. Fun with testing PRs is the name of this pull request. It came from somebody called taking into account that anybody who can contribute to, taking into account that anyone can contribute. GitHub is pseudonymous, and it's all to say, if your code's good, come from anywhere, use whatever name you want to use. It's sort of secondary to what is the code. Here we've got a file that has been changed. It adds the name Reason. Reason seems like a fella who is worthy of contributing and whose contributions are worthy of the repo. Let's merge them in. I'll look back at the code and see that now Reason has made a contribution. And we'll note that Reason is showing up on the same line here, and looking at the actual raw of the README file, it's on a second line. So that's a little bit of an improvement that we can make to this code base, is to get Reason's name on a second line. Let's look at update README by Sam, and I am not a reviewer on it, but I'm going to request and put myself on as the reviewer. So now when I look back at pull requests, if I do a quick update here, oh, pardon me, it doesn't show anybody's reviewed it. So let me say that review is requested, but there are conflicts on this branch, and therefore it's unable to be merged. Let's look at add Tom to contributors. Checking mergeability, it has some conflicts. Let's look at adding Doug, and there's some conflicts too. When you get a bunch of people contributing to the same code base, it's possible that people will be writing things that conflict with the things that other people are writing. As the owner of this repository, I can make a resolution to the conflict on my own. When you get into merge requests, you have standard notation to how to resolve those conflicts. If you're seeing this on the screen, I'll show you the 3 lines of code that get added when you have merge conflict. The first one is a bunch of arrow carrots that point to the left. The last one is a bunch of arrow carrots that point to the right. And then you have the equal sign and the center. With that said, we have to take what is on top of the equals and below the carrots, and take what is below the equals and on top of the carrots, and figure out what's right. So if I'm thinking about the way this has worked so far, I would say that Reason was the first one merged. He ought to be second. I would say that Doug is now trying to get into this repository. He ought to follow up afterwards. And now that looks pretty cool. And what we're left with are these notations. These notations are known as merge conflict markers. They're not anything that you actually want to have appear in the repository. They're there for you as the reviewer to understand what was and what is now. And because Git cannot automatically determine which was the right answer, as the reviewer, I am making that determination. I'm going to delete those merge markers, and now this looks the way that I would say is accurate. I can mark it as resolve. I can now do this little commit merge, and what happens there is after GitHub does the processing on it, this cannot be rebased due to conflicts. I'll do a create a merge, and then I'll merge the pull request, add Doug as the contributor, merge it, and after the end of that code reviewing process, we've now got Doug in here. I'm the owner of this project, and I don't want to merge everybody's conflicts. I want to say to the next fella, who, let's see, we've got Tom, and then we've got Midnight Pineapple. Who here is Midnight Pineapple is Sam? I'm going to say that Sam can go ahead and fix his own conflicts. So what I'll do here is just say, Midnight Pineapple, fix your conflicts, and comment on it. So the tool that underlies GitHub is called Git. It doesn't have any social aspect to it. It doesn't have any of this users in the same way as GitHub does. This is all on top of the raw tool of Git. Git has branches, Git has merging, Git does not have pull requests. So the value that GitHub adds is all this stuff that we need to do in order to get Git to play nicely with people. I'm going to close this pull request. So is there a more efficient way other than people sending comments back and forth? On top of all of GitHub's manual stuff are the option to add in bots to your repository. And a bot can say, you've got some merge conflicts, go fix them up. A tool can look through those conflicts and then assign it to a certain person on the team to handle them. It could say, we want to triage this by having one of the contributors who's core to the team look it over and review it. You can use some of these tools on the sides. Like I could say this label here is a duplicate. And by the way, this is also a won't fix. We're not going to work on this. And now we've done a little bit more to give some context to that contribution. So to Sam, who's now got that comment, he can go ahead and on his own leisure decide to make a new pull request that doesn't have any conflicts on it. Tom seems like somebody we can do that improvement for. We can merge his conflict in a similar way as before. He is the last one in. He'll be the last on that. And we'll mark this as resolved and do a commit to that one. So now we've got a couple people on here, and they're all on the same line. We've got a new pull request, add Tom to contributors. This is something that was merged in, right? What? No? Cool. All right. So we had fixed the merge, but we didn't actually accept the PR. Now we've got a challenge. Somebody named Sam hasn't been able to get his stuff in because there was a conflict. So we can stop and we can give Sam a minute to open up a new PR and get his name in there. We can do that. And assuming Sam wants to do that, and Sam, you can raise your hand if you do.
I got it, yeah.
Cool. All right. We'll talk about another problem with this repository. All the names are on the same line. So we've got the names in there. We know who's contributing. We've got 9 commits on here, and we can look and we can see that Doug did a commit and Tom did a commit, and this Extrion authored and Peter committed. And the reason that these are showing up as my name is because I did that little bit of improvement for somebody. But we'll see in a second some commit come in from, who is that? Sam. We can see that GitHub gives us a little bit of information about who's doing commits to these projects. I'll give you a personal anecdote. If I go to a repository that I contribute to, which is called NGRX, and then I look over there, what is this called? Platform. You can see that this particular fella, Brandon Roberts, has made 213 contributions. That's a lot on this repository. You scroll down a little bit, you see Peter B. Smith too has done 11 commits. They've been done over time. The size of the commits is small relative to some of the things that Brandon does, yet it's something to show how active anyone is in any of these repositories. Sometimes it's a good indicator of how much you're contributing, sometimes it's not, but it's something that GitHub makes available, and you can look at that for any repository that's available in public. So we've got this fella, Sam, coming back at us with, please accept this time, and it looks like it's not going to have any conflicts on it. I'll do a quick review on the files changed. We've got, hi, I'm Sam down there. And let's have a merge for that. It looks good. Okay. So we've got no pull requests. We've got 6 that were closed. If we click on those that are closed, we can see that 5 of them were merged, 1 of them was closed, and now we've got a history of contributions to this project. This is all good stuff. We're all doing coding together, we're making PRs, and we're improving on the project. Sam added in something that nobody else added before, which is 3 lines that give this little spacer. And let's now talk about getting the standards of this raised. I'll open up an issue and I'll do something that says, a new issue, make all contributors appear on the new line below the previous. I'll say in the comments the current behavior, all contributors in the README are displaying on the same line. Desired behavior, let's show them all on different lines. We'll submit a new issue. Now we've got an issue. This is available to the public. Anybody can look at it and understand that there's a desire to fix this part of the repository. Would anybody in this crowd like to make that fix? Would you raise your hand if you're interested in making that fix? We got Tom. We got.
Why is it though, I call them the local repository, I call them as a local repository.
Yep.
When I open it from the command line, I see them all on separate lines.
Yep. All right. So we've got a question around why are they not on the same line? Tom, would you go in and write down that question in the comments on this issue? So there's an issue. We've got the current behavior, and then we've got some desired behavior, and it's not exactly clear how to achieve that desired behavior. And if somebody wants to contribute, but they're not exactly sure how, they can make a comment on the issue. If you want to indicate that an issue is good for somebody who's never made a contribution before, you can mark it and use the label Good First Issue. You could also use the label Help Wanted. You could also use the label Hacktoberfest. And now we've got some indicators that make this clear to anybody who wants to contribute. This issue is something that you could solve. Why do they look like they are on separate lines to me? We can say this, Markdown adds a new line. Whoa! Before the owner of the repository, myself, could answer the question, somebody else has made a comment. Now we're getting really open source. We've got a community of people that are all looking at this and helping out to improve the code quality. So I'll share an example that looks like Doug, and then looks like Peter. And this is some markdown. Then I'll say we need to add 2 spaces to the end of every line so they appear correct. So if I'm showing the new example, it's going to be Doug, space, space, and then a new line, and then Peter. If I do a preview, that doesn't help us. So we just have to say something like,
Been a while since I have to argue about markdown and didn't have comments. I don't know how to use it.
there are 2 spaces here. Please add 2 spaces to the end of every line in the README. I'll make that comment there. Cool. Now we can see that there's 2 of these. So that's the way to fix this issue, is to, in this README file, add in 2 spaces to the end of every line. And we can talk while that issue is getting fixed. Pull requests, pull requests, pull requests. This is every open source's lifeblood, yet it's also a very closed source, professional way of working together on a team. And it tends to be very different at every organization. Some organizations, anyone can review a pull request. In other organizations, only specific people can approve pull requests. You might have a reviewer for parts of code who is different from a reviewer for other parts of code. Improving the velocity of a project, which is to say how fast a pull request gets merged, can be done in any number of ways. If it takes 3 days for Tom to approve a pull request, you could understand maybe Tom's only approving pull requests on Wednesdays. So make sure you get your stuff in before Wednesday so that it can get merged in. Another way is to add in some other people who have the capability to do some approvals. Let's add in a new capability to have another person approve on this project. We can go into collaborators. This is a sensitive part of the repository. And we'll do an autofill on that. And then it looks like this is probably all right. I'm not sure. But you know who I trust? That fella Sam from before. He was able to respond to a closed pull request. I figure that Sam could contribute as a trusted collaborator, so I can add him as a collaborator. He's got an invite link to his email now he's got to accept, so I don't know what to say other than Sam's got to check his email, become a collaborator, and then we can move forward with this little bit. Awaiting Midnight Pineapple's response, awaiting Midnight Pineapple's response, awaiting, waiting, 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 waiting.
You might have to log in for your
Boy. That guy Reason was the first one. He was eager. We could add him as a collaborator. Feeling good about Reason. So, add Tom, add Doug, add contributors.
Now, Peter, coming from experience, what if, like, you know, I submit my PR. Does that mean, like, the person who controls the repo is going to basically just drop everything and work on my pull request and review it and merge it immediately?
I had one that was open for
Yep.
a year before the guy, like, got back and said something. I was quite surprised. But he actually said something.
Cool. So, what are expectations around getting your pull request merged? Let's think about that a little bit, not in terms of code, just in terms of people. Do you have a job? Oh, yeah. Does that feed you and your family? Yeah, probably. Do you get paid to merge pull requests? Nah. So let's talk about when somebody who's volunteering their time might submit your pull request. They might do it immediately. They also might not do it for a couple of days. And your expectation has to be metered around that. The bigger the repository, the more possibility it is that somebody is getting paid to maintain it. There's a lot of folks out there that'll sponsor repositories. There are repositories in the open source world that are so fundamental that entire foundations get built and they're funded to keep it maintained. Linux is a great example. There's a Linux Foundation which major corporations contribute millions of dollars to make sure that the folks who contribute to the open source Linux project are able to feed their family because Linux is so valuable to those major corporations that if they were relying on volunteers, it would not work out. A lot of projects do not have that. A lot of projects are single maintainer based. And depending on how that one single person is living their life is going to reflect in the ability to get a pull request merged in a timely fashion. All right. We've got 3 reviewers on this project, and we've got Reason is one of them. We've got Midnight Pineapple, who we know as Sam, is another one. If I go to the settings and I go to collaborators, I would think that there would be permissions on this, but I don't see them, and I'm just going to think that these people have push.
Push but not review, I think.
So I got to think about, let's see, interaction limit prior contributors, limit, acceleration. I'm not sure. So I'm going to think, why not somebody who's a reviewer, like review this and merge it? Is that possible?
Well,
So-
I'm not seeing that I have review permissions. It has all the requests to review, but I don't see the necessary UI unless they're Yeah, you're right, there we go, that was where it was.
Yeah.
It'll be a button on the main page, it'll be there now.
So I'm gonna approve these changes. Looks good to me. Took me a little bit to write that. I'm just gonna write LGTM. Submit.
Is
Okay.
there any way for me, when I made that change in the pull request, to link it to that specific issue?
Can you link a pull request to an issue? Well, how do you do that is a little bit of knowing how Git works. You have a Git commit, and it has a headline, and then you have a Git message body. And a Git message body is a great place to add in a little bit of metadata around what issue your specific commit is referencing. So if I go to a major repository like Angular, I have a look at some of the 15,911 commits. I see a little triple dot to the right of them, and in that triple dot, I see some information that goes beyond the headline, and at the very end, I see something that says PR close number 33476. When I click on 33476 here, I can see a few things like the commits and requested review, and it's a redo of 333, et cetera, and then all this happens around it, yet that came from a specific bit of metadata that GitHub was aware of in here. So we can see PR close, et cetera, PR close, et cetera. You can say something in your Git commit like closes or fixes or a number of other keywords, and you can use that as a way to have GitHub be aware of which issue is being fixed by a pull request. So this pull request is also number 8, and another way we can tackle this is to go into here and say, looks like number 8 addresses this, have a comment on it. We can go back to that pull request number 8 and then see something that Peter Smith referenced this pull request, and now we've got some linkage here. There's a couple ways to go about it, and well, let's have a look and see for the final bit here. We've got a couple comments from Reason on this pull request, and I don't see them. Huh.
Should I go ahead and save back to conversation?
Well, looks generally like a thing. Approve it. Looks good to me. So we've got some comments. General approval. 2 people think it's good. Let's go ahead and merge it in. Okay, going back to the code. And now we're cooking. And let's have that be the end of activity after we close this issue. That's definitely important. Let's close the issue. Let's say nailed it.
So how would I make a pull request from the command line? I have to clone it, make a commit, and then go into GitHub?
The question is, how do you make a pull request from the command line? Nope. All right. So moving on. Nah. So let's talk about it. You can do a couple things. Pull requests are this addition added by Git. You can configure GitHub to listen for all incoming pushes. You could probably use something like GitHub Actions, and if you come to the next meetup, that might be something you could discuss. But by default, Git does not have pull requests built in. So by default, you would be unable to make a pull request. So in order to do that, there's, go figure, a way to program for that to happen. But out of the box, you couldn't. Any other thoughts about just questions?
That's a workflow thing, you fork the repo, you clone the forked repo to your local repo, and then you actually have you'll have a separate, you have 2 masters, which you're pointing to
So there was just a,
Actually, on top of that, there's actually a way now that's when, I think this is a Git feature now, that when you push up to remote, that remote can send stuff back to you. And in this instance of GitHub, it actually says, hey, we noticed there is this branch, would you like to possibly make a PR? And it'll actually give you a link that you basically click and it'll go straight to the create PR UI.
Oh, really?
In addition, there are also tools you can download where like you can type in create pull request and then like the branch you want to create it, like both the base and the head of the pull request, like what you're merging into and what is being merged, like the two sides of it, I guess. And then it'll open up your editor